Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm 32 years old and still can't wrap my head around what happened with my sister. I'm Asian American, and my fiance is white. We've been together for 4 years, and he proposed last month. In my culture, there's this thing called a bride price, where the groom pays money to the bride's family. Our traditional weddings last 2 days with tons of ceremonies. I told my fiance from the start that we'd have an American wedding instead. One day, simple ceremony, done. He was totally fine with it. I've told my family this several times, but some people don't listen. Here's where things get complicated. I have several siblings and they all left me to take care of our parents after I graduated high school. While they lived their lives, I became the default caregiver. My dad died over 10 years ago, so it was just me and my mom. When my mom needed help with errands or doctor visits, my siblings would promise to help but always found excuses. They'd say they were too busy with work or that I should handle it since I lived closer. Everything got pushed back to me. 3 years ago, my mom had a stroke and needed round-the-clock care. I was drowning trying to manage everything alone. I called every sibling begging for help. They all said the right things on the phone. My brother promised he'd help and told me not to worry. When I asked when he could start since mom couldn't be left alone, he said he'd check his schedule. He lived with us and barely helped. I come home from work to find him playing video games while mom struggled to get to the bathroom. My other siblings gave me empty promises. After my mom developed dementia, following her stroke, I had to put her in a nursing home for proper care. It broke my heart, but I couldn't handle her medical needs alone. My mom can't manage her finances now, so that responsibility fell to me too. Everything always does. Last week, my sister, who's 8 years older than me, sent a text about wedding planning. She lives 2 states away with her husband and has for over 15 years. She asked when we were doing the cultural wedding since she knew I'd mentioned American style before, but surely I was doing both. I told her no, we were only having an American wedding. One ceremony, one day. She asked about the bride price since that was tradition. I told her there wouldn't be one because none of them deserved it. She fired back saying she deserved that money. When I asked based on what, she said she helped raise me when I was little and deserved compensation. I had to read that message 3 times. This woman moved out when I was barely 10 years old. She helped babysit me occasionally before that. She disappeared when our parents actually needed help. Now she thought she deserved money for raising me. I pointed out that babysitting me sometimes until I was 10 wasn't raising a child. She insisted she did more and I knew it. She listed how she changed my diapers, fed me, and played with me. She said she was like a second mom. I reminded her that she was a teenager doing what teenagers in big families do. I asked where she was when mom needed help. Where was she during the stroke? During the dementia diagnosis? Where was she when I was working full-time in caregiving? She said that was different because I was an adult and could handle it. I pointed out she's 8 years older than me. She explained she had her own family and couldn't drop everything. I asked why she thought I could drop everything, but she couldn't. The conversation went in circles. She believed that watching me as a kid entitled her to thousands of dollars from my wedding. Never mind that she vanished when our family needed her. Never mind that I've been the only one sacrificing for our parents for over a decade. She said I was being selfish and the money should be split between all siblings. I asked why it should go to people who did nothing. I asked if she wanted money for abandoning the family. She said they didn't abandon anyone, they just moved on with their lives. I reminded her that I put my life on hold to care for our parents. She said no one asked me to do that. No one asked me. Who else was going to do it? Our parents needed help and everyone else disappeared. I told her she was right that no one asked me to sacrifice my 20s while they lived their lives, which was exactly why none of them deserved money from my wedding. She said that wasn't fair, and as my sister, she had a right to that money. I told her she had no rights. I explained that the bride price goes to people who actually supported the bride and her family. That wasn't her. She tried calling, but I didn't answer. She started texting about how ungrateful I was and how family should stick together. She said I was being vindictive. My other siblings reached out after she complained to them. Suddenly, everyone cared about tradition and family unity. Funny how that works when money gets involved. My sister kept insisting she raised me and deserved compensation. This woman got married right out of high school and moved away. She maybe helped with childcare for a couple years when she was a teenager. She thought that entitled her to wedding money 15 years later. Meanwhile, I held our mom's hand through doctor appointments. I learned to manage medications and insurance claims. I made the heartbreaking decision to put her in a nursing home because I couldn't provide the medical care she needed. I visit her every week even though she doesn't always remember who I am. But changing some diapers 20 years ago means you deserve a payday. She sent me a long email calculating what she thought she was owed. She put a dollar amount on those few years of help. The entitlement was staggering. I made a decision. No bride price and she is not invited to the wedding. None of them are. Why would I want people there who see my marriage as a business transaction they should profit from? My fiancé has been supportive through this. He never wanted the traditional wedding anyway. He is disgusted by how my siblings are acting. We're planning a small ceremony with close friends and family members who actually matter. My sister has no idea she's been uninvited. She's been texting about dress shopping and asking for wedding details. I haven't told her she won't be getting any information because she won't be there. Some people might think I'm being harsh, but I'm done enabling this behavior. During the pandemic, I was stuck at home scrolling through social media and seeing all these amazing food photos. I decided to try it myself with my takeout orders, and something about capturing the colors and presentation just clicked with me. Now I have this whole Instagram account dedicated to it. Nothing fancy, just pictures of meals that catch my eye. My followers seem to enjoy it, and it gives me something creative to focus on outside of spreadsheets and client presentations. When my college friends suggested we meet up at this upscale restaurant downtown 2 nights ago, I was actually excited. We don't get together nearly as often as we used to, and I'd heard this place had incredible presentation. I volunteered to be the designated driver since I don't drink much anyway, and I was looking forward to getting some great shots for my account. The restaurant was everything I'd hoped for. Dim lighting, elegant atmosphere, the kind of place where they clearly put thought into how each dish looked. We got seated at a nice table, and everyone seemed to be in good spirits. We caught up on work drama, relationships, the usual stuff you talk about when you haven't seen each other in months. When our food arrived, I almost gasped. My plate was gorgeous. I'd ordered the steak special, which came with truffle mashed potatoes, this rich brown gravy, and actual caviar as a garnish. But the real showstopper was the hibiscus flower they'd placed on top. The whole thing looked like a work of art, with the deep red of the flour contrasting against the golden brown of the steak and the creamy white potatoes. I pulled out my phone and angled it over my plate, trying to get the lighting just right. The overhead fixtures were casting this perfect warm glow, and I knew this was going to be one of my best shots yet. That's when Karen reached across the table with her fork and just stirred everything up. The beautiful presentation was destroyed in seconds. The caviar scattered, the hibiscus flower got buried under a mess of gravy and potato, and what had been an elegant arrangement turned into what looked like cafeteria slop. I asked her what the hell she was doing and why she would ruin my food like that. Karen rolled her eyes and told me that taking pictures of food was cringe and that I should just eat it already. She acted like she was doing me some kind of favor. I stared at her, completely stunned. The other two girls at the table shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but nobody said anything. They just sat there looking awkward while Karen continued eating like nothing had happened. I told her I wasn't stopping anyone from eating and that I just wanted one picture. Karen kept going, saying it was weird, and that people should enjoy their food instead of posting everything online for attention. The others let out these nervous laughs, the kind you do when you're uncomfortable but don't want to get involved. I could see in their faces that they knew what Karen had done was wrong, but they weren't going to speak up about it. I felt my face getting hot. This wasn't just about the picture anymore. It was about basic respect. Who destroys someone else's food as a joke? And what kind of friends just sit there and watch it happen? I said that I didn't want to be here anymore. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked straight to the door. Behind me, I could hear Karen calling out something about it being just a joke, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home, my hands shaking with anger the entire way. When I got to my apartment, I immediately pulled up my banking app and sent money to one of the other girls, the one who'd been sitting closest to my plate. I assumed she'd covered my meal since she was always the organized one in our group. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with texts. Karen sent me a message saying it was just a joke and that I was being way too sensitive about this. The second friend texted that I shouldn't have left them there without a ride and that what I did was really immature. The third friend complained that they had to call an Uber that cost them $40 and that I'd overreacted. Karen sent another message claiming she was trying to help me live in the moment instead of worrying about social media all the time. I turned my phone face down and tried to process what had just happened. Maybe I had overreacted by leaving, but I was so angry and humiliated that I couldn't think straight. The more I thought about it, though, the angrier I got. Not just at Karen, but at all of them. The next morning, I woke up to more messages. Apparently, they'd spent the rest of dinner talking about how dramatic I was being. Karen had convinced them that she was actually doing me a favor by breaking my phone addiction and that I owed her an apology. That's when I decided I was done trying to justify myself. I screenshot all their messages and posted them to my close friend story with a caption about when your friends think destroying your property as a prank is funny, but leaving early is crossing the line. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends who knew about my food photography hobby were horrified. Several people shared their own stories about boundary crossing friends, and a few mutual acquaintances reached out to say they'd always thought Karen was problematic. That afternoon, one of the girls who'd been at dinner, the quiet one who'd just laughed awkwardly, called me. She told me she saw my story and that she was really sorry she didn't say anything the night before. I said it was fine and that I understood it was awkward, but she insisted it wasn't fine. She explained that Karen does stuff like this all the time, and they just let her get away with it because it's easier than calling her out. She admitted that what Karen did to my food was mean, and then trying to make me feel bad about being upset was even worse. I told her I appreciated her saying that. She went on to explain that she'd told the others how she really felt about the whole situation. Karen got defensive and said they were ganging up on her, but she thought maybe it was time someone did. It turned out that Karen had been pulling similar stunts for years, making jokes at people's expense, then playing victim when they got upset. The group had been enabling her because confrontation felt harder than just dealing with her behavior. 2 days later, I got a message from Karen herself. Not an apology, but a long rant about how I was trying to turn people against her and that she'd only been trying to help me be more present. She ended it by saying she didn't want to be friends with someone so sensitive anyway. I blocked her number and felt lighter than I had in years. My Karen neighbor moved in about a month after I did. From the first day, she caused nothing but trouble. She started running some kind of business out of her garage at all hours of the night. The constant noise from machinery and people coming and going kept everyone on the street awake. When neighbors tried to complain, she would slam her door in their faces. I thought I'd try being friendly at first. I walked over to introduce myself and mentioned that I was an electrician if she ever needed help. That turned out to be a huge mistake. I told her I was her new neighbor and offered to help with any electrical work she might need. She got excited and said that was perfect because she needed me to run power lines from my house to hers. She explained that her electricity bills were getting too expensive for her business. When I asked what she meant exactly, she said she wanted to connect to my electrical system temporarily. She claimed I probably didn't use much power anyway and wouldn't even notice the difference. I explained that what she wanted was illegal and dangerous. I told her it was also stealing. She got angry and called me selfish and unhelpful. That was our first conversation, and things only got worse from there. Over the next few weeks, her demands became more ridiculous. She wanted me to do free electrical work on her house. She claimed I owed her money because my property line was supposedly crossing onto hers by 2 inches. She even suggested I should help pay her utility bills since my outdoor lights were brightening up her yard for free. The real problem started when I noticed my electricity bills were higher than they should be. I'm pretty good at estimating power usage, and something wasn't adding up. I started watching my meter more closely and noticed it was spinning faster than normal. This happened especially at night when her business was running. I called the utility company to report possible theft. They came out to investigate and found evidence that someone had been tampering with the electrical lines. The technician told me whoever did it had disconnected recently, probably after messing up the job. Then came that terrible night 3 weeks ago. I was asleep when I heard the most horrible scream I've ever heard in my life. It was around 2 in the morning and the sound made my blood run cold. I jumped out of bed and looked out my window. I could see sparks flying near the electrical lines behind my house. I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside to see what happened. There she was, lying unconscious on the ground near my electrical meter. She had burns all over her body and tools scattered around her. There was also some kind of makeshift wiring set up next to her. It was obvious what had happened. She had tried to steal my electricity again and got electrocuted. I called 911 right away. The paramedics arrived within minutes and told me that if I hadn't found her when I did, she might have died. They rushed her to the hospital with severe electrical burns. I thought the whole nightmare was finally over. I was completely wrong. 2 weeks later, someone knocked on my door to serve me with legal papers. She was suing me for $1 million. She claimed I was responsible for her injuries. According to her lawsuit, I had created a dangerous electrical hazard on my property. She said I failed to warn her about the danger. She also claimed I had encouraged her illegal activity by not securing my electrical system properly. I read through the papers in complete shock. She was actually trying to blame me for getting hurt while she was trying to steal from me. I hired a lawyer right away. He looked at the case and started laughing. He told me this was the most ridiculous lawsuit he had seen in 20 years. He said not to worry because we will get it thrown out quickly. The case went to court last week. She showed up with some cheap lawyer who looked like he didn't want to be there. I had my attorney, plus the utility company sent someone as a witness. The fire department also provided their incident report. When the judge read her complaint out loud, people in the courtroom were trying not to laugh. Her lawyer argued that I should have known she might try to access my electrical system. He claimed I should have taken steps to prevent it. The judge asked if he understood correctly. He wanted to know if she was suing because she got injured while trying to commit theft. Her lawyer said his client was just trying to access what she thought was a shared utility connection. The judge pointed out that climbing over a fence at 2 in the morning with wire cutters wasn't accessing a shared connection. He said it was breaking and entering with intent to steal. My lawyer showed evidence of all her previous demands for free electricity. He presented the utility company's investigation and witness statements from neighbors about her illegal business. The fire department's report clearly showed she had been trying to create an unauthorized connection to my electrical system. The judge didn't need any time to think about it. He said the lawsuit was not only ridiculous, but an insult to his courtroom. He explained that she got injured while committing a crime and now had the nerve to sue her victim for damages. He dismissed the case completely, but the judge wasn't finished yet. He ordered her to pay my attorney's fees. He also said he was sending the matter to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges. He explained that breaking and entering, trying to steal utilities, and filing a fake lawsuit were all serious crimes. She started screaming that it wasn't fair and that I had somehow set her up. Security guards had to drag her out of the courtroom. But there's more good news. The investigation into her business showed she had been running an illegal manufacturing operation. She didn't have permits or proper electrical systems. The city shut down her business and gave her heavy fines. She had to sell her house to pay all her legal bills and fines. 3 weeks ago, both my manager and a colleague decided to take time off during the same week. I got stuck covering for both of them because apparently I'm the only one who knows our systems well enough to handle escalations. I didn't mind too much at first since covering for management usually means getting noticed by the higher-ups, which could lead to promotions down the line. Then Friday afternoon rolled around, and at exactly 2 in the afternoon my phone started buzzing with what the company loves to call an urgent escalation. Our biggest client's entire payment processing system had gone down, and they were losing thousands of dollars every minute it stayed offline. The kind of situation that makes executives panic and start throwing around words like lawsuit and contract termination. I spent Friday evening until 8 in the evening troubleshooting with the client's technical team, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. When I got home, my son was already asleep and my wife was exhausted from handling bedtime alone. I grabbed a quick dinner and went to bed, knowing I'd probably be working all weekend. Saturday morning, I was back on my laptop by 7, coordinating with our development team and the client's infrastructure people. The problem was more complex than we'd initially thought, involving some legacy code that nobody had touched in 2 years. I spent the entire day documenting the issue, testing fixes, and communicating updates to everyone involved. Sunday was more the same. I missed taking my son to the park like we do every weekend, missed family lunch with my in-laws, and barely saw my wife except when she brought me coffee and sandwiches. By Sunday evening, we'd finally gotten everything working again, but I'd put in about 16 hours over the weekend on top of the 6 hours Friday evening. When I got back to the office Monday, I was exhausted but figured the company would make it right. After all, they're always talking about work-life balance and taking care of employees. I went straight to human resources to ask about compensation for the overtime. The lady in HR looked at my timesheet and nodded sympathetically. She told me that I had definitely put in extra hours and that the policy allowed me to either take monetary compensation or arrange time off with my manager. She mentioned that most people prefer the time off option. I told her that sounded good and that I'd like to take 2 extra vacation days in December since things slow down then anyway. She explained that I'd need to work that out with my manager since he had to approve any time off arrangements. So I scheduled a meeting with my manager later that week. He's one of those guys who thinks being busy makes him important, always rushing between meetings with his coffee cup and talking loudly on phone calls so everyone knows how essential he is. I explained that I wanted to discuss compensation for the weekend work I did on the client escalation and that HR said I could arrange time off with him. I requested 2 extra vacation days in December. He said that 2 days for 2.5 days of work seemed fair, but that he didn't agree with taking them in December because we might need me then. Instead, he told me to just leave early on Fridays and put it in my calendar so everyone knows. I was annoyed but figured leaving early every Friday wasn't a bad deal. The unspoken rule around our office is that nothing important happens after 2 on Fridays anyway, unless there's a real emergency. Most people are mentally checked out by then, scrolling social media or planning their weekend. He reminded me to make sure I put it in my calendar so people know I'm unavailable Friday afternoons. I told him that wouldn't be a problem and that I'd update my calendar right away. So that's exactly what I did. Every Friday at 2, I'd pack up my laptop, say goodbye to whoever was still around, and head home early to spend time with my family. It was actually great having those extra few hours with my son, helping with dinner, and not feeling completely drained by the weekend. This went on for about 3 weeks without any issues. Then last Friday happened. My manager had scheduled a meeting for 1 o'clock to review a major proposal I'd put together for our most important strategic client. This was the kind of proposal that could make or break quarterly numbers, and I'd spent weeks researching their needs and putting together a comprehensive solution. The meeting was supposed to be crucial because our chief technology officer wanted to review everything before presenting it to the client on Monday. I prepared extensively, had all my research organized, and was ready to walk through every detail. At 12:45, just 15 minutes before our meeting, my phone buzzed with a message. My manager said he needed to reschedule our meeting because something urgent had come up, and that we'd figure out another time. I was frustrated since I'd been prepared and ready to go, but these things happen in corporate life. I finished up some other work and left at 2. I looked forward to picking up my son from daycare early and maybe taking him to the playground. We spent the afternoon building with blocks and reading books. Around 4, we were in the middle of a game where he pretends to be a dinosaur and I have to run away when my phone started ringing. I looked at it and saw my manager's name. Then it rang again and again. After the fourth call, a text message popped up where he said it was urgent and that he needed to go over the proposal right now because the chief technology officer wanted to review it today. He demanded that I call him immediately. I looked at my son, who was roaring and chasing me around the living room, completely delighted with our game. Then I looked back at my phone. My manager had canceled our scheduled meeting. He told me to leave early on Fridays. I was using the time he'd specifically allocated to me for working an entire weekend. I turned my phone face down and continued playing dinosaurs. The phone kept buzzing with calls and messages, but I ignored every single one. My son and I built a fort out of couch cushions, had an early dinner, and watched cartoons until my wife got home from work. Sunday evening, when I was helping get our son ready for bed, I noticed a new meeting invitation in my calendar. Monday morning, 9 in the morning, with my manager and a senior HR representative I'd never worked with before. The subject line just said follow-up discussion. I accepted the meeting and spent Sunday evening preparing. I printed out copies of my original escalation timesheet, my manager's email telling me to leave early on Fridays, and screenshots of my updated calendar showing my Friday afternoon unavailability. Monday morning, I walked into the conference room and found my manager already there looking agitated, along with a woman in her 50s wearing a crisp business suit. She introduced herself and said that she understood there was some confusion Friday afternoon regarding availability and project deadlines. She explained that she'd like to hear both perspectives so we could resolve this appropriately. She had a completely neutral tone which I appreciated. No accusations, just fact-finding. She started by asking about the compensation arrangement and mentioned that she could see I had worked 2.5 extra days, but we'd been discussing 2 vacation days. She wanted to understand the discrepancy. My manager said I had worked some overtime but that 2 days off seemed like reasonable compensation. She corrected him by saying that she was actually seeing 2.5 days documented and that our policy was hour for hour compensation unless there was a specific reason for reduction. My manager's face went red, but he didn't argue with her. She then asked us to walk her through what happened Friday afternoon regarding availability. I explained the entire situation, showing her the paper trail of my manager canceling our scheduled meeting, then trying to reschedule during my designated time off. My manager argued that this had been urgent and that the chief technology officer needed to review the proposal. He said that when business needs arise, employees need to be flexible. She acknowledged that she understood business urgency but pointed out that he had specifically told me to take Friday afternoons off. She mentioned that if he didn't want me taking time off, our policy allowed cash compensation instead. My manager looked at her like she'd just suggested we start paying salaries in Monopoly money. He complained that we couldn't just throw money at every little overtime situation. She corrected him by saying it wasn't a little situation but rather 2.5 days of documented overtime work that needed proper compensation according to company policy. After about 30 minutes of back and forth, she laid out the resolution. She explained that 1 full day would be added to my December vacation since that was my original request and that I could choose to take both days, then if I preferred, or continue with Friday early releases. I told her I'd rather keep the Friday arrangement because it was working well for my family. She continued by saying that the quarter day from last Friday was already taken and that the remaining 1.25 days could be used at my discretion through December 31st. She specified that I needed to provide 24 hours written notice before taking any time off. My manager complained that 24 hours seemed excessive for just leaving early, but she explained that it was standard policy for any compensation time to ensure business continuity. She asked if this arrangement was acceptable to both parties. I said it was absolutely acceptable and thanked her for clarifying the policy. My manager said he supposed it was workable. When we left the conference room, I sent a detailed thank you email to both of them, summarizing everything we discussed and officially notifying them of my plans. I wrote that I appreciated them taking the time to resolve this situation appropriately and that per our discussion, I'd be utilizing my remaining 1 1/4 compensation days over the next 4 Fridays and 1 Monday before my December vacation began. I added that I appreciated the company's commitment to fair compensation policies. My manager's jaw was clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might crack, but he couldn't say anything since HR had explicitly approved everything. Now I have it all in writing. Every Friday afternoon through December, plus 1 full Monday, completely guilt-free. And if any more urgent situations arise on Friday afternoons, well, I'll be unavailable with official HR approval. I started working at McDonald's when I was 18. My first location was pretty decent with fair managers and a crew that got along well. When they offered to transfer me to a store closer to my apartment, I jumped at the chance since it would cut my commute in half. That turned out to be a huge mistake. The new store had this shift leader who made everyone's life miserable. Since she was an entitled woman who acted like she owned the place, I'll call her Karen. Karen had been there for 4 years and treated that like it made her royalty. She would yell at people for the smallest things and find fault with everything you did. If you worked fast, she said you were being careless. If you took your time to be accurate, she said you were too slow. Clean something thoroughly and she'd say you were wasting time. Don't clean it enough and she'd call you disgusting. There was no winning with her. The worst part was how she micromanaged everything. She would stand behind you and watch every single movement you made. She'd question your judgment even when you'd been doing the job perfectly for months. I had a work friend there who had been at that location for over a year. They knew the job inside and out, but Karen treated them like they were completely incompetent. She would redo work they had already finished correctly and make them feel terrible about themselves. The breaking point came when I was restocking supplies up front and overheard Karen talking to my friend near the registers. My friend had made some comment about how busy lunch rush had been, just normal workplace conversation. Karen immediately repeated what they had said, but in this mocking, nasty tone that was clearly meant to humiliate them. She did this exaggerated impression that made my friend sound stupid. I could see my friend's face fall, and they tried to laugh it off, but I knew it hurt. That's when I decided Karen needed to be put in her place. The next day I was working in the kitchen with Karen during the slow period between lunch and dinner. We had strict policies about not making your break food ahead of time because management was cracking down on food waste and theft. But Karen always broke this rule. I watched her deliberately make an extra double cheeseburger with no pickles. She put on this fake surprised act like it was an accident. Then she grabbed one of the generic alteration stickers and put it on the wrapper, but the sticker didn't say what was different about the burger. The burger sat there on the warming tray while Karen kept working, waiting for her break time. She kept looking over at it every few minutes. When about 10 minutes had passed, I caught my friend's eye and smiled. I walked over and picked up the burger, examining the sticker with a confused expression. I told my friend that the burger had been sitting there for a while and I couldn't tell what the sticker was for, so maybe we should throw it away. My friend caught on immediately and agreed that we should toss it since we couldn't tell what was wrong with it. I walked straight to the trash and dumped the burger in, making sure Karen could see me do it. She was busy at the grill, but I knew she'd notice soon enough. Sure enough, when her break started about 5 minutes later, Karen went looking for her burger. When she couldn't find it on the warming tray, she started frantically checking everywhere. Then she started screaming through the kitchen, demanding to know who had thrown away the double cheeseburger. Everyone stopped working to look. I turned around and told her that I had thrown it away because it had been sitting there too long, and I couldn't tell what the sticker was marking, so I followed policy and tossed it. Karen's face went bright red, and she stood there staring at me. She knew exactly what had happened, and she knew that I knew, but there was nothing she could do about it. I had followed the rules perfectly. She tried to argue that the burger was fine and the sticker was just marking something minor. I asked her what exactly the alteration was, since I couldn't tell from the sticker. I reminded her that food safety policy says, when in doubt, throw it out. She was completely trapped. The managers had been drilling food safety rules into us for weeks, and I was quoting them word for word. If she tried to write me up, she'd have to explain why there was an unmarked burger sitting around in the first place. Karen finally gave up and told me to be more careful next time. I said I would make sure to follow all policies exactly like I was supposed to. She knew what I meant by that. She gave me one final angry look before going back to the grill to make herself a new burger during her actual break time. My friend was trying so hard not to laugh that they had to turn around and pretend to organize cups. The other crew members who saw everything were giving me thumbs up when Karen wasn't looking. For the rest of that shift, Karen was much quieter. She still complained about things but seemed to pick her battles more carefully, and she never made her break food early when I was around again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.